questioning what happened at the presidential preference election a few weeks ago. What we see here are members of our constituency, and this includes obviously Maricopa County, but if you head to the smaller counties, the same thing happened. We had many voters that were disenfranchised. Either they could not cast their vote because they were now listed as an independent, where many people contacted us personally to tell us that they had never, ever registered as an independent in this state, had always been a Democrat or actually been a Republican, but were now registered as an independent, and therefore they were not allowed to vote. In Maricopa County, we saw people standing in line trying to cast their ballot. Many of those people were independents, but many of them were Democrats that had to wait 4 hours to cast their ballot. Today, many of them wonder, were their votes counted? So we are here in solidarity with this coalition, knowing that we have to go forward. There's no way we can go back and change what happened. The election has already been validated, but we certainly don't want to see this happen again in Arizona. We have 3 more elections coming up. We have Prop 123. We have our primary election in August, and we have our general election in November. And we are here to make sure that this does not happen again in this state. We do not appreciate being part of national news talking about the fact that we are part of voter suppression. Every vote counts. Every person's vote counts. We encourage people to register to vote. We encourage people to go to the next step to vote, and we are here to tell people of Arizona that we want to make sure their vote counts. I'm lucky enough to be a part of a Democratic caucus that we were on the right side of this. And I'm not going to take too much time because I have my colleagues that are here to talk about what they saw on that day and what they see going forward. But what we're asking, members of Arizona, residents of Arizona, please step forward. This is a priority. We cannot continue to suppress the vote here in Arizona. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to my colleague and actually my seatmate from Yuma County, and that's Representative Lisa Tondo. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the press and everybody that's come out here to have their voices heard. When I look at what happened on Tuesday, the election day of the presidential preference election, I see a greater problem that has happened across Arizona. There have been several bills that suppress the vote, that bring in more opportunities for dark money into Arizona. But the real problem is the budget, and as we look down the next 10 days, the next 15 days, we're going to see where true problems lie in the state of Arizona. You see, in last year's budget, the counties were cut severely, and the presidential preference election was also cut to $1.25 per voter. It left the counties really in a very difficult position because they simply didn't have the money. There was a lot of cost shifting going on from the state to the counties. We are now at a point where this state is actually offering corporate welfare as opposed to supporting our citizens, our students, and the things that matter to us most. We are promoting private prisons and not supporting K through 12 and universities. We are shifting costs to cities and counties, and the end result of that you saw on Tuesday, the day of the presidential primary election. The problems are deep in Arizona, and what we ask is we ask for you to organize, to remember November, to talk to your neighbors, your family members, and the community together. And remember, we do this in peace, but with loud voices, because we can change Arizona, and we can change it for the better. And we can make sure that we eliminate voter suppression, that we can educate our children, and so that universities can be affordable for everybody. We ask that you organize so that this is not a state of corporate welfare, but one that takes care of our citizens. And our public schools our universities, our children, and our families. Thank you for coming today. And with that, I would also like to say how proud I am of our two members that sat on the election committee. Both Representative Larkin and Clark fought hard in a situation where the committees are stacked, 2 members against 5. Thank you, Representative Larkin. Thank you, Representative Clark, for asking to listen to the voters, to not go to the floor that day. You see, what happened in the gallery was only a ramification of people who are upset. We ask that we all work together in peace, but that we don't forget our voices. Please organize. Please remember November. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Rotondo. Thank you, everybody, for coming out today. Voter suppression comes in many forms, whether that's restricting the media from the House floor, not being prepared at the polling places, or not allowing voters to speak in the House of Representatives, the People's House, at a committee hearing. As a Marine, I can tell you a lot of blood has been shed throughout our country's history to make sure that people can vote and to make sure that people can vote in the election process here, to make sure their voices are heard. And it is absolutely a travesty after so many wars and so many veterans have given the ultimate sacrifice that we are faced with voter suppression here today. I encourage every single person, whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat, to get out the vote for this November, and let's make a positive change. And let's end voter suppression. Let's protect our media. Let's make sure that people continue to have a voice in this country. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand it over to my colleague, Representative Clark, that is going to present to you today a comprehensive agenda that can start turning this state around. Representative Clark.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. So the court cases are starting we're hearing about something getting together with attorneys to deal with this last election. So I can't speak to that, but I can speak to what's going to happen next. But we got to take a moment and realize, for years, Republicans have said, oh, this talk about voter suppression, it's just Democrats trying to get an edge. But this was an interesting primary, because you saw Republicans and independents coming out for Cruz and Trump couldn't get to their polling places. So the decisions that have been made at this legislature for years are starting to hurt everybody. And this is about everybody. So we want to think about what comes next. And I have 5 points of what we could do to make sure this doesn't happen again. Number 1, we need to amend a state statute like other counties such that Maricopa County must have at least 1 polling place for every 2,000 residents, or 2,000 voters. This is very simple. Other counties do this. Maricopa County got a pass on this, and we saw what happened. Number 2, really simple. Allow registered independents to vote in the presidential preference primary. Number 3, and we talked about this in committee, the legislature should fully fund a sufficient number of polling locations to meet the demand, as well as providing funding for election officials to educate the public, including high school students, and about important voting regulations. Look, how confusing is it for you if you're an independent in Arizona? You are told you can vote on this day, but you can't vote on that day. Now imagine if you've got the students in high school who are becoming voters. They are being confused by this system. These are the folks who should be taking over the system for us. This is the next generation. Why don't we spend money to educate these people? There's where the money should be. Number 4, create a 5-member panel of retired judges to review state election law changes and election administration plans, to compare that against the Voter Protection, the Voting Rights Act. I asked the elections officials, did you think that your choice to go down to 60 polling places might be in violation of the Voting Rights Act? And they said, we didn't even think about that. That is a travesty. We are not under protection to pre-clearance in the Voting Rights Act. We need to have people who will be our watchdogs, and we can do that with a panel of retired judges. Number 5, simply allow automatic voter registration for residents when they get their driver's license at the Department of Motor Vehicles. Very simple. At least 2 other states have done that. There is no reason why we can't do that here. We're going to be working first to organize, to knock on doors, to get voters to understand what's going to happen in November. Remember November. And then we're going to introduce legislation and get ready for next year. Thank you all very much.
Hi, my name is State Representative Richard Andrade. I represent Legislative District 29, which is West Phoenix, South Glendale, and Litchfield Park. We had the only polling location open in LD 29, not only for 29, but also for LD 30. And what I saw that evening, I was proud. I was proud to see the number of people coming out to vote that evening. For the first time, I saw many young people coming out and voting for the first time and talking to them and saying, thank you so much, but don't let this be the last time. But then you know what else I saw? I saw that long line. I saw it go from the front of the polling location, around the parking lot, into the street and down the neighborhood. And that's when I realized we have something seriously wrong here. We had elderly out there, and thank God it wasn't one of our normal, typical 90-degree days, because the elderly were out there, and disabled people who depend on their one voice to be counted, were there waiting in line. That evening, there were so many people, and they were getting angry. But don't get angry. Turn that anger into something positive. Don't forget to vote in November, because your voice does matter. Your voice does count. When I'm out there talking to voters, I tell them every day that your voice does matter. So don't get discouraged. It is time for us to organize. It is time for us to step up and start paying attention to what's going on here. Voter suppression is going on here to keep our voices quiet. How does that affect us when they get their way? You're seeing what's going on today. You're seeing our cuts in education. You're seeing the cuts to our most needy in our communities. You're seeing more prisons and that industry growing. That is where all the money's going. And we need to put a stop to that. And the only way we're going to do that is coming out and start voting. Coming out and saying, we're tired. We need a change in Arizona. Because every single voice does matter. Every voice from Democrat, Republican, and especially our independents. Because we need you more than you believe, more than you think. Because your voice does matter, and we need a change in Arizona, and that change has to happen today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Rosana Gabaldon. I represent Legislative District 2, which is part of Southeast Pima County, and I have all of Santa Cruz County. So I like to say South Tucson to Nogales. I want to thank the media that's here today, and I want to welcome the media back to the floor of the House. Yes. Welcome back. I'm glad that you're going to be there. When it comes to voting, it's very important. When I talk to my constituency and they feel that their voices are not heard, my vote doesn't count. Well, that's not true. And so I keep telling them to keep the faith, and we are going to work very hard here at the legislature to make a difference when it comes to voting and making your vote count. I want to thank personally Representative Diego Espinosa for trying to do a new rule, getting the media back on the floor, and thank to his efforts, to the Democratic caucus, and to all that supported that. Thank you very much, because it's very important that the public has a voice, and they hear about things through our media. So with that, any questions?
Thank you all very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Thank you,
We
everybody.
have a big hand for our legislators. These are the people working to make a change for the people in Arizona. Let's give them the respect that they deserve.
Sorry, I didn't mean to shake block you there.